We all have those moments from the past that sneak up on us like uninvited guests, don't we? Maybe it's that mistake you replay in your head, the what-ifs of a choice you made, or a chapter of life you wish you could crumple up and toss out forever. But here's the thing, even though you've grown, changed, or maybe even done a full 180 from who you used to be, those old stories can still cling to you like heavy baggage. It's like they're anchors, right? Weighing down your heart, whispering that you're still tied to the person you were, not the person you've worked so hard to become. Even if your life today looks nothing like the past, shame has this sneaky way of crashing the party, making you feel like you're still stuck in yesterday's shadows. Sound familiar? But here's what I want you to know. Carrying that weight doesn't make you broken. It makes you human. And the fact that you care so deeply, that's not a weakness. It's proof you've got a heart that's still learning, still growing. Let's talk about how to loosen that anchor together. Let's kick things off with a quick word nerd moment, because words matter, right? When it comes to regrets or tough stuff from our past, therapists actually split those feelings into two types, guilt and shame. Now, these aren't exactly the definitions you'd find in a dictionary, sorry Webster, but they're super helpful for understanding how we tick. Guilt is that icky feeling you get about something you did, like, ugh, I wish I hadn't said that, or why did I eat the entire pizza? We've all been there, and guess what? Everyone feels guilt. Everyone, no exceptions. Why? Because no one gets through life without messing up, making choices they're not proud of, or accidentally acting like a slightly worse version of themselves. Seriously, if you're sitting here thinking, wow, my baggage could fill a cargo plane, let me stop you. You're not alone, not even close. You're in very, very good company. Trust me, I've got my own collection of oops moments. So let's just pause here and say it loud. Guilt is human. It doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're here, living life, with a track record of oopsie daisies like the rest of us. Guilt is kind of like pain when we talked about pain versus suffering in the concept of radical acceptance. It is inevitable, and to some degree, it is unavoidable. We all have things we're not proud of. I certainly do, and I don't think there's a single human being, if someone's out there with no guilt, they're probably delusional or narcissistic, because it is not possible to make it through this life without screwing up. But guilt doesn't always have to turn into shame. So guilt is an acute feeling of regret, right? Guilt is like, I did something wrong. I screwed something up. I'm not happy with how this went. Shame is what happens when guilt becomes grafted onto our identity and our self-concept. And rather than seeing these regrets or these challenges from our past as being like things that happened or things that we did, we see them as part of who we are. So, to give a few examples, guilt would say, I have failed, or I failed at this particular thing at this particular time. Shame would overgeneralize that and say, I am a failure. Guilt would say, I have made some mistakes in my past. That would also acknowledge, even if it is unspoken, I've also done some things well in my past. I am a mix of good and bad, like all people. Shame would say, I am a mistake. My existence is a mistake. I shouldn't even be here. I just make everything worse and screw everything up for everybody. In order for guilt to turn into shame, cognitive distortions have to occur. Cognitive distortions are literally twisted thoughts or thinking errors that cause us to perceive things in an unrealistically negative manner and view things like failure or like mistakes as in an inevitable pattern, like the actual truth of who we are. And it forms a belief system that causes us to see anything good that we've done or positive events in our lives, things that don't fit up what we perceive to be the pattern, as basically like external events like, oh, I just got lucky, or, yeah, I was in a good mood that day, or whatever ever. But we don't internalize positive because that wouldn't match our self-concept, our shame-based belief system that we are this worthless, screwed-up failure of a person. Shame is a very, very difficult thing to let go of once it has made its way into your system. But I am going to articulate to you today a 3-step process that I've been able to use, at least for myself and for some of my therapy clients as well, to help work on releasing and letting go of shame. The first thing you need to understand is what the purpose of shame is. Shame does have a purpose. You might think there is no purpose, it just makes people miserable all the time, and it's just this horrible thing. There is one and exactly one time when shame has a purpose. And in order to explain to you the purpose of shame, I have to give you a little bit of education on what's called the stages of change model. And so, when we feel guilt or shame, either one, about something that's happened in our past, usually that's meant to be a motivator for us to change, right? So, if I'm looking back at my past and I say like, oh, I acted without love to my wife, like I said, or did something that wasn't consistent with who I want to be as a husband, if I feel bad about that should, in theory, help me not do that as much in the future. So it helps us grow, it helps us change, it helps us improve, it helps us evolve, etc. And when we want to change something about ourselves, whether it's an action, a value, addition, whatever, it may be there's 5 stages that we tend to go through, and we actually tend to go through these in order. The first stage is pre-contemplation. When you are in pre-contemplation about making a change, you either are in denial that there's a problem, or you're aware that it's a problem, but you don't want to change it, or you're not ready to change it. You basically are making a commitment to yourself. I'm going to stay the way I am. I'm not going to work on changing this thing about myself. That's pre-contemplation. Contemplation is when you have acknowledged that there is a problem, and you know that at some point in your life, you are going to want to change this thing, but you are not sure if you're ready to change or ready to make that commitment yet. So it's kind of one step into readiness. The third step in the stages of change model is preparation. And when a person is in preparation, they have made a commitment to change. They have made a decision that they're going to work on changing. I feel like I've said change like 7 million times. But I guess that's just the nature of talking about the stages of change model. So we've made a commitment to change, and we're starting to figure out, how am I going to do this? Maybe we don't know what the action steps are yet, so we're seeking information, we're making a plan, and we're getting ready to take some action steps to actually create this change. And action is the 4th step in the behavioral stages of change model. This is when we're actually doing something to create or execute the change. The last step is maintenance. So that's when, we basically have made this change, and we're just trying to make sure we don't backslide or relapse or whatever the case may be. Shame is designed to move you into contemplation. So shame is like, I feel so bad about this thing. I feel so bad about what I've done or who I am that I really need to start thinking about changing that thing. And if you've ever seen an intervention, for example, that's basically what an intervention is designed to do. It's somewhat of a shame-based intervention, and it's designed to move a person from pre-contemplation to contemplation. And so, if you are in pre-contemplation, if you are in denial about a problem you have, or if you are unwilling to look at considering changing a habit or an addiction, shame can actually help break through that. And shame can help get you to the point where you're willing to say, okay, I do have this problem. I do need to figure this out. I do need to work on it. So shame automatically helps you get to that contemplation level on the stages of change. However, if you apply shame to someone who's already in preparation or action or maintenance, it actually holds them back to contemplation again. It keeps you in this, I need to change. I need to figure this out. I need to do something different mindset, because that is what it is designed to do. So what that means is, if you are already past pre-contemplation in some certain problem, let's say I feel like I need an example to really flesh this out. Let's say that you have shame about a shopping problem that you've been an overspender, and it's put you, and maybe your family if you have a family, it's put you in a difficult state financially. You guys are in some debt, and you're struggling to get out of it because of this problem you've had, and you somewhat understandably feel shame about that. You needed that shame when you were not yet ready to face this problem, when you were not yet ready to acknowledge this problem, there's some certain amount of feeling bad about things we've done, or who we are, or who we've been at least, that we do need to experience, and that creates motivation and desire for change, because we look within and we say, oh my gosh, this feels horrible. I don't want to be this person anymore. I don't want to feel this way anymore. And that's where the motivation to move into contemplation comes from. But as soon as you have entered contemplation, and especially if you've moved beyond contemplation, shame instantly becomes a liability, and it becomes something that will hold you back, because you do not need to sit in constant distress and agony over things you used to be and a person you used to be, things you used to do, if you are actively working on changing it. If you've already decided, I don't like this about myself, I need to work on this, and you're moving through those action steps, shame is just going to keep pulling you back to that contemplation phase again and again and again, because that is what it is designed to do. So please, 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 I know I'm being a little repetitive today, but this is an important topic, and it's a difficult topic, and I want to make sure a few key points get through to you. Shame has no purpose once a person has already decided that they want to change. That's the only thing it can ever help you with. And as soon as you've gotten there, it becomes a liability that will hold you back. And we should work on wanting and trying to let go of shame as soon as we are out of denial. I know this is just step 1 out of 3. Okay, I know that saying, I want to let go of shame, does not automatically cause you to let go of shame. It is much more complicated than that, and that's what steps 2 and 3 are going to be about. But I want to start here, because we tend to actually have some ambivalence or some uncertainty about letting go of shame, because even though it feels horrible, and even though it makes us miserable, we often feel this conundrum of worry that if we let go of this shame, we will backslide, and we will become that person again, and we will start doing those things again, and that we need to constantly feel horrible about that past or about those decisions in order to not backslide. And I know it seems like it makes sense on the surface, but nothing could be further from the truth. Shame is actually the most common reason that I see people backslide. It keeps you in that spot. Guilt is different. Guilt can help you continue to move through those stages of change, but not shame, not when it becomes that deeply ingrained. Sense of self of I am screwed up, I am worthless, I am this horrible person. That is a liability, and it's not going to help you. So that being said, this is still easier said than done. Me saying this to you, you hearing this today, and finally understanding how shame works and what it does and doesn't do, is not going to just eradicate it from your brain, because thoughts are habits, and the cognitive distortions, the mental twisting of thoughts and experiences causes guilt to become shame, is habitual. Once you start thinking in this certain way, it's very hard to just stop doing it. It becomes a part of your normal thought process. So the second step in the process of letting go of shame is to work on identifying when you are twisting things into shame and then trying to untwist them so that they move. And this part might sound weird, but bear with me, so that they move back into guilt. You might have thought I was going to say so that we can make them positive. I think that that is unrealistic and not even necessarily helpful, because with all the love and respect in the world, you have screwed some things up, right? So has everybody else out there, and we don't want to keep doing those things. And if we try to apply overly positive, unrealistically positive language to those things, then we would be at risk of repeating them. We do need that little bit of oh man, I know I'm capable of doing these things, these not great things, right? I know I'm capable of being this person I don't like. And we do need to maintain some level of awareness of that. We just don't want to incorporate it into our identity so that it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So we want to take those shame thoughts and put them back to guilt, which, remember, guilt is acute. Past statements like, this did happen. I did do this. I am not proud of this. I am not happy about this. But we keep them there. We cut them off right there. And we don't let them become those deeply ingrained, I am this. I will always be this. I am worthless. I am terrible. We always extract them from our identities because they're not a part of who we are anymore. That's what we're working on. That's why we're moving through these stages of change, and we put them back in their place where they belong, in the past. And that part can take a very, very long time because thoughts are patterns, and patterns do not change easily. But I want you to work on looking inward, looking for those twists, those mental adjustments you make where you overgeneralize or catastrophize or engage in black and white thinking and turn these thoughts into shame thoughts. The third thing that can really help people to let go of shame and can strengthen and speed up the work in the second step. This is a hard one, and you might cringe. Okay, I'm just being real with you. Is to talk about it, is to talk about the things that you are ashamed of with other people. Now, you may need to set up somewhat of a hierarchy of that because the sources of your shame probably range from, "This is really embarrassing and I prefer people not know about me," to, "I'm going to try to take this one to my grave if possible," right? And I would recommend starting with the lowest ones. The reason it is important to talk about your sources of shame is because if you don't ever share these things with anybody else, then the only person whose feedback you will ever hear on these topics is your own. And you have already made up your mind about them. You have already decided they are horrible, they are unforgivable, they are beyond understanding, and you should just feel awful about them for the rest of your life. You are essentially like the judge, the jury, and the executioner, and it basically just becomes this internal echo chamber where the shame grows and grows and grows because shame grows in secrecy. Shame grows when we don't talk about it. Shame grows when we tell ourselves, "This is so horrible. No human being can ever know this about you, and you have to hold this one inside forever because if anyone knew, they would judge you. They would hate you. They would despise you. They would leave you." Start with the lowest one, but if you can start to let some people in about the things you are ashamed of, what that can essentially do is it can shine some light on the darkness that creates and grows the shame, because I can virtually guarantee you, unless you have some really just non-understanding people in your life, probably no one is going to be as hard on you about these things as you are on yourself, because you probably have more negative belief systems about yourself than anyone else in your life. And other people, if you can let them in little by little, piece by piece, will probably give you things like compassion, understanding, empathy, context. And these are all things that start to chip away at the shame and help you see, yeah, I wish I hadn't done that. Yeah, I wish that had gone different for me, but it's not who I am today. I have and am continuing to take action steps to move myself further and further away from being that person or from doing those things. And as you're doing that, mentally realizing you're doing that, getting feedback from other people that you're doing that, and realizing that your shame has basically run its course and is no longer serving a useful or an adaptive function in your life, I do believe that with enough time that you will chip away at that shame, and that you may eventually be able to put it back in its place as guilt and nothing more. And that can make all the difference. I hope this helps, and I hope it made sense to you. If it did not, please let me know, and I will do my best to elaborate. Take care, and I will see you next time.